start with the 8 basic strokes. And the first one that we're going to start with is the entry stroke. You'll use this entry stroke for every lowercase letter. There's 8 foundation strokes for lowercase letters, and we're going to start with the entry stroke. First stroke, you're going to start at the baseline and go to the waistline. And what you're attempting to do is stay within the axis, and then you're going to start at the baseline with a slight curve up. So we're just slightly curving up. It's just a slight curve up. We're going to start at the baseline, and our goal is to just stay on axis, essentially. So start at the baseline and then just go up. And we're going to get closer to the baseline. We're starting at the baseline. I'm not putting any pressure on the nib, so there's no pressure that's going on the nib. We'll get a little bit closer. So there's no pressure that's going on the nib. I'm starting at the baseline, and then I'm just making a slight curve to the right until I reach the waistline. So starting at the baseline with a slight curve to the right until I reach the waistline. So we're going from here to here, and we're curving to the right. So that is our entry stroke. Our next stroke is the downstroke. All right, I'll show you with the pencil first, actually. There's a couple different ways that you can make a downstroke, and a downstroke is just, it's what it sounds like. You're essentially starting at the waistline, going to the baseline, and you're making a downstroke. The goal is to square the top and the bottom and to make sure that it's as even as you can get it. So typically what I like to do is make a small line. So I'll make a small line, I'll go down, and then I'll allow the tines to close, and that will give me a square at the bottom. So I'll show you what it looks like here. It's a little bit finicky to see with that, with a pencil, but you'll make a small square, a small line, small horizontal line. The tines will open. Once you reach the baseline, you will slowly allow the tines to close. So it's a small horizontal line. You'll go down and then allow the tines to close. And you're using very, very light pressure. There's virtually any pressure. So I were to do that, you see that's very light pressure. So I'm going to make a small horizontal line and then come down and allow the tines to close. And you want to make sure that you're following the guidelines. So we're just going to make a small line. We're going to come down. For our next stroke, we'll start at the baseline. We're going to curve up until we reach the waistline, and then we're going to make a downstroke. Couple things to notice here. Right here in this area, we are not immediately going from, you see how it goes? It's a gentle transition from the upstroke or from the thin line to the thick line. We want to make sure that we have that grace there and we're not doing this. So we don't want to do this. We don't want to immediately go from thin to thick here. So we're going to start the baseline. You're going to curve over to the right, and then you're going to, right here, keep that. When you get here, you want to just ever so slightly lift up and then begin your downstroke. So we want to come up, then begin the downstroke. So there's a more graceful transition to the downstroke. So when we're starting the underturn, we're going to do a small horizontal line. We're going to come down. We're going to lift up just a little bit. You see here in this little area here, I'm not completely doing a full downstroke. We're not doing a full downstroke, and that one's a little bit finicky, but we're not doing a full downstroke. We're lifting up just a little bit just before we get to the baseline. So it's similar to the overturn. All right, so a couple mistakes here that I did on purpose so that you can see. You want to always make sure that you're hitting the baseline here. You want to make sure that the bottom of this underturn hits the baseline. You also want to make sure that you're not going above the waistline. You don't want to go above the waistline. And then similar with the overturn, we also don't want this to happen. We don't want to come here and then, I have a little bit too much ink, immediately go from thick to thin. Immediately go from thick to thin. So with the underturn, we are here. With the overturn, we're the exact opposite. So it should be, if you were to flip the page, our overturn should look like underturns, and then vice versa. Our underturn should look like overturns. Our next stroke, I'll show you first with the pen. It's going to be a compound stroke. And this compound stroke is going to be a combination of our overturn and underturn. So we're going to start at the baseline. We'll curve over to the right until we reach the waistline. We'll gently lift up as we're transitioning to the downturn. We'll do a downturn, and then we'll transition until we reach the waistline. And you'll notice a couple different things. The length between the inside of both of these is fairly the same width. So you'll want to make sure that it's the same width. This is, we're going to start at the baseline. We'll curve over to the right, come down, curve over to the right again. So make one more, and then we'll talk about these. So the same thing, you want to be able to flip your paper and they have the same distance. So we always want to make sure that the inside of these have about as close distance as you can. You see here, this is where I'm saying you want to make sure that when you are transitioning from thick to thin, that you lift up just before you reach the baseline so that you don't get this sort of pool of ink. And so it's a more seamless transition and a more graceful stroke and the correct stroke. Okay, we're gonna start with our oval. So typically with the oval, I like to start, I'll show you a couple different ways. I like to start at about 1 o'clock, do a little small upstroke, come down, and then connect the two. And a couple different things to note. It's an oval and it's not a circle. So this is what we don't want. We want an oval. And almost on this right side here, it's almost kind of flat. If you look on the right side, it's a bit flat. So this is what we want. Another way that you can make this is you can start at 12 o'clock and then end it. So you can start more so like whichever way you prefer. I would try both ways and then see what you prefer. If you'll notice, again, right before we reach the baseline, I'm lifting up. So right before we reach the baseline, I'm lifting up so that I can make sure that the letter form is correct. So you don't want it to be super thick down here at the bottom. And the other thing that we don't want is for it to be off of our 55-degree angle. So we don't want it too round, right? We don't want this. It's a bit too round. We want it more so like an oval. Our final 2 strokes will be in a cinder loop. So what I like to do is start in the corner here, about here. And then we're going to make an upstroke. Once we reach the second ascender line, we will slowly start to come down. And so you see here, I'm not immediately transitioning to the downstroke. Remember, every time we do an upstroke, that's a thin stroke. Every time we do a downstroke, that's a thicker stroke. So we won't apply any pressure on upstrokes, and then for downstrokes, we'll always apply just a bit of pressure. But we don't want to transition. We want our transitions to be graceful from thick to thin. So we know that when we're coming down, doing this downstroke, we need to apply a little bit of pressure, but we don't have to apply that like immediately. So if I were to apply pressure immediately, it would look like this, going from the thin stroke and then the thick stroke. And this is what we don't want. So we already have our thin upstroke, and then we're going to come back and then we'll end with a downstroke. And I'll do one more here, or a couple more actually. Again, starting here. But let's try to make that a little bit. And so what's the goal? The goal is we want to avoid being too angular here in this area. We want to make sure that when we're transitioning from thick to thin, that we are gracefully and slowly transitioning from thick to thin. So that way our letter forms, when we're making our letter forms, they will be correct. Our letter forms will be graceful, and we'll be making the proper letter forms. So again, we want to start in the, I like to start in the corner here when I'm practicing. We want to start with thin upstroke. We want to gracefully move into the downstroke. And then the descender loop will come here. The descender loop is the exact opposite. So what we'll do is we'll start here at the waistline with a horizontal line. We'll do a downstroke and then curve back up. So let's go here. And it's the same principle, right? We don't want to, again, when we're transitioning from thick to thin, we want to be cognizant of that area there. And a line there. And I would say you can come all the way up until you reach, I like to go just below the baseline here. And the reason being is because when you start to make your letter forms, it's a good practice to go just below the baseline. If you go to the waistline, particularly on certain letters, then they won't, it will just make the letter look just a bit weird. So those are the 8 foundation strokes. I would encourage you to make a page of each and to practice it during the week. So you could do a page of upstrokes, a page of downstrokes, or you could spend, 5 minutes on upstrokes, 5 minutes on downstrokes. Just, you want to make sure that there's a consistency with the way that you're practicing and you're doing every single day so that you can develop the muscle memory. So again, we'll make all of the strokes again. We want to start from the baseline to the waistline, curving up. And this is our entry stroke, our downstroke. We want to make a horizontal line. I'm a little bit over on that, I can tell. Horizontal line until we have a nice, as about uniform as we can get it, downstroke, and then you can always go back and make any adjustments. With our overturn, we want to start at the baseline, curve over to the right until we reach the waistline, and then gracefully curve down with a downstroke. Exact opposite for the underturn. We'll make that one a little bit better. It's our compound stroke. This is our oval. Cinder loop. And then our descender loop. And with your descender loop, try to get as close to this second descender line